I only want to annoy you people that showed up. I don't want to annoy people that we posted the video for. Okay, thank you. So this morning is a special day at 1 Million Cups across the Midwest, and that Pipeline Fellows are presenting at Kansas City, St. Louis, Omaha, Wichita? Is it, did I get them all? Is there another one? Anyway, this morning, and also will be available to answer any questions that people have about the fellowship, about the application process. Their deadline's coming up at the end of next week. So, so in that spirit, we have Michelle Fates from ProArt Diagnostics, and I'm very excited because we have a life science company to break up much more, as you know, as my faithful NMC attendees, a lot more in the tech space and occasionally some products, but today we get to talk about bio. So, take it away, Michelle. You can just hang there with that mic. Okay. All right.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Go. All right.
Great. I want it in your face.
Thank you. I'll project a little bit, and then hopefully the mic will make up the difference. If you can't hear me at any point in the back, just raise your hand. I'll try to speak a little bit louder. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Michelle Fates. I'm CEO of ProArt Diagnostics, and I was also a Pipeline Fellow in the 2016 class. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my company, a little bit about Pipeline, then afterwards I'm happy to answer any questions about either one. So I'm a PhD biologist by training, and what my company does can get a little bit technical, but put simply, what we do is make a blood test for a virus. This virus scares a lot of people away from taking really important medications, so the more people who take my test, the more people who get access to high-quality medications. So to understand why my test is important, you need to know a little bit about the drugs that my test can help people take. These drugs are called monoclonal antibody therapies, MABs for short. Now, MABs is a funny word, but it describes a really powerful scientific concept. With a MAB, scientists design antibodies to target things that the body's own immune system can't recognize. That means it's really good at treating things like cancer, but also powerful at treating autoimmune diseases, where the body's own immune system is the problem. These are incredibly powerful therapeutics for diseases like multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, and psoriasis. These are incredibly effective medications for these conditions, and patients love to take them to treat these conditions because they can provide powerful relief. Not only do patients and doctors like these medications, pharmaceutical companies like them as well. The first MAB was approved in 1986, and since then this industry has been exploding. There are currently 47 approved MABs on the market today, over 300 in some stage of development along the FDA pipeline. This represents an $86 billion market for pharmaceutical companies. Let me give you two examples of MABs that hit the market and were hailed as miracle drugs. The first is Raptiva. Now, Raptiva hit the market in 2004, and it was the first effective treatment for patients with very severe psoriasis. People who had to bandage their hands to go to work every day finally had relief when taking Raptiva. Another example is Tysabri. This is a MAB that treats multiple sclerosis. It was introduced in 2004 and cut MS relapses for MS patients in half compared to the other drugs. And it didn't have the nasty side effects that other first-line MS treatments had. So these drugs are great. And I can tell you that today, 0% of psoriasis patients take Raptiva, pulled from the market. You can't take it. Only 2% of MS patients take Tysabri. It's held as a drug of last resort. You have to fail on your other treatments before your doctor will even consider putting you on this drug. So why is that? It's because of the JC virus. So what's the JC virus? The JC virus is one of these viruses that's very common. It's estimated that about 80% of the population is a carrier of the JC virus. As long as you're healthy, it doesn't hurt you, your immune system keeps it quiet. But if you have a mutated strain of the JC virus and something compromises your immune system, like you take one of these MABs for an autoimmune disease, then mutated JC virus can become active and infect the cells of your brain, causing a terrible and often fatal brain infection called PML. Now the problem is right now there's no test for mutated forms of the JC virus, so doctors have no idea which of their patients will respond to their medications by developing PML. And that's the problem that we solve. ProArt makes a blood test that for the first time is specific for strains of the JC virus that cause PML. So we can identify which patients are truly at risk and who can take MAB treatment safely. Now right now, there is only one test that's commonly used on the market offered by our competitor Quest Diagnostics. It can tell you if you're a carrier of the JC virus, but the problem is that most people are carriers of the JC virus. 80% of people test positive when using this test. That's despite the fact that only 0.6% of carriers ever get PML when taking drugs like Tysabri. That means currently far too many people are being excluded from treatment with these drugs that could provide effective relief from chronic conditions. We can do better. Our test works by looking at the specific DNA code of a patient's circulating strains of JC virus. We are able to effectively identify if you have the JC virus, and if you do, whether you have non-mutated strains, or if your JC virus strains carry the mutations that allow the JC virus to infect the brain and cause PML. In doing this, we can more precisely identify the patients who are truly at risk. So our beachhead market is going to be multiple sclerosis. This is where patients often have to make the hardest choice between having effective relief from a very debilitating condition, but also taking drugs that have the highest risk of causing PML. But it's not just multiple sclerosis that has a PML problem. Autoimmune diseases where best-in-class treatments carry a risk of causing PML are a broader market. And so if we look at patients with these autoimmune diseases in the United States, that's 3.1 million patients available for ProArt Diagnostics. Now, it's not just autoimmune diseases treated with mAbs that cause PML problems. Any condition that directly impacts the body's immune system or is treated with a drug that does so can cause PML, and that represents patients with blood cancers, HIV/AIDS, and organ transplant recipients. All told, that represents 5.9 million patients in the United States, representing a TAM of $5.9 billion for ProArt Diagnostics in the United States. Now, where we stand today is we've accumulated $120,000 of pre-seed funding, which has allowed us to show that this test is effective in human patient samples. We've got this test up and running in our laboratory and demonstrated that it works in a limited number of patients. What we're focused on now is raising a seed round of $1.5 million, which will give us 18 to 24 months of runway and fund a 550-patient study, allowing us to collect the final clinical data we need to show physicians this is effective and get it put into a laboratory where we can begin generating sales. Next steps following our seed round activities will be to establish this test in the laboratory, begin sales, and target specifically the multiple sclerosis market and get more patients access to the therapies they need. Now, I know that was kind of a whirlwind tour of ProArt Diagnostics, but I wanted to save some time to talk a little bit about Pipeline and the impact that it's had on me and my company and why you should apply. So, Pipeline, let's just start with the question, what is Pipeline? And, I think that this slide really summarizes what Pipeline can be. It's a home to a family of high-performing entrepreneurs. And Pipeline makes a lot of noise about how it is a family, and I think that really captures what's most powerful about being part of Pipeline. So, I just want to give a few photos from my fellowship year last year. This is a photo taken of the 13 fellows that were part of my fellowship class. This was taken during the first module. So what happens is entrepreneurs from around the Midwest sort of get thrown together in the first modules. This was taken before we all really knew each other. We didn't really know what we were signing up for, but we were thrown into module 1. And in each of the modules, they sit you down and you go through intensive training with incredibly talented facilitators and teachers who work with you to sort of take your business, sort of tear it apart down to its very fundamentals, and then build it back up and get stronger for it. So this is a photo from Module 3, which I think one of my favorite experiences in Pipeline. It is 1 o'clock in the morning in this photo, and we are all working on our financial projections with my fellow classmates here. And just being able to sit down and have a network of people that you can work with, that you can reveal the weaknesses and the strengths of your business, that you can run ideas by, people who aren't necessarily in your field. I don't think anyone in this photo is in biotech, but just talking about the fundamentals of entrepreneurship with them made all of our companies stronger. So this is us by the end of the year. We've really bonded as a family. I think at this point, any of us could have pitched anybody else's company in our fellowship class because we were that strong. And not only do you get that close with the other fellows in your class, you also get access to the network of people who have been fellows in previous years, or who are the module teachers, facilitators, mentors. I found as an entrepreneur before I joined Pipeline that if there was a really, really rough point in my business, there was no one I could text. I didn't want to tell my co-founders about it because it was the company and I didn't want to stress them. I can't text my parents because they aren't entrepreneurs, they don't understand it. But Pipeline puts you in a family, and these are the people you can go to when things get rough, when things are going well, when you need help. So, with that said, the application deadline is coming up. I would encourage anyone to apply. We also have a couple of Pipeline entrepreneurs in the audience, so if you have any questions, talk to me, talk to them, and I'll open it up for questions on that.
Okay, thank you. want to kick off a question for around ProArc?
Put that slide back up on your raise.
Jump right
Thank you.
You're all about the money, Dave.
It's all about the money.
All about the Benjamins. Okay, who wants to start? Fabulous question askers.
So my question revolves around just time commitments, travel, financial commitments, all the kind of what's involved from that standpoint as far as getting involved in the program, and like how long is it? Just kind of the particulars, if you will, around kind of how it's structured and what's involved.
Yeah, so with Pipeline, you will attend 4 modules, 4 training modules. Each is about 3 days long. So spread throughout the year, you'll need to take 3 days every 3 months or so to travel to 3 modules within the Midwest, so St. Louis, Nebraska, Kansas City, and then 1 module always somewhere in an entrepreneurship community elsewhere. So it was Ireland my year, Seattle this year, Canada next year. So, and then between modules you'll have homework to do, but you have a couple months to do it, so that's not the biggest time commitment. Getting, sort of putting your business down for a couple days and traveling to a module can be pretty time intensive, but I think what was powerful for me is that I was sort of like, well, I'm busy, I have a company to run, but then so does everybody else in your fellowship. So I think everybody really finds that setting it down day to day and then just focusing for 3 days intensely on the fundamentals of your business pretty rewarding. So that's the time commitment. Financial commitment, I don't know if it's changed since my year. There is a $2,500 fee to participate, to be part of the program, but that also covers all of your travel for the year. So my year we went to Ireland, and the $2,500 covered hotels, lodging, food for all the modules, including airfare and hotel stay.
Questions, ProArc or Pipeline question?
How diverse are the entrepreneurs in the class? Do you guys come from different industries, or?
Yeah, incredibly diverse. So it's all different industries, all different stages. I think a representative example is when I went in for my interview, I was sitting next to Justin in the blue jacket, and we'd never met. We introduced ourselves, and I said that I was a seed stage biotech entrepreneur making a blood test for a virus that causes a brain infection, no customers, 1 employee, no revenue, still raising money to get science done. And he has a cybersecurity firm with 30 employees and tons of revenue, and he's been around for 10 years, and we both walked away from each other thinking, I'm not going to get in, because I was sort of like, I have nothing, and he's like, I don't save lives, but both of us got in, and we're part of the program, and I think that represents the wide span of it. There's people who are revenue generating, who've been around for 10 years, who've been around for a few months. I was still finishing my PhD when I joined the program, so it's a pretty diverse spread that way. So any stage, any industry, definitely apply.
Well, let's go back to the money, if you don't mind. So tell me exactly what you're planning on doing, what you're planning on doing with this money, and are you going to only prove for this virus? Do you think it could potentially apply to other viruses? I mean, let's be honest, our body is just full of viruses, and potential trapdoors, whenever anybody is prescribing any of these kind of medications. What do you see the long term? I guess I'm asking what's the medium term and the long term plan for the company?
Great questions. So first, what we're going to do with the money. Where our test stands today is it was proven in an academic setting to work in around 20 human patient blood samples. So it's already in humans, that's good, that's a big step, but it's in a limited number of samples. I don't want to get too deep into the regulatory weeds, but because we're a diagnostic, we don't need FDA approval to sell our test. We can be put into something called the CLIA lab and go straight to market that way. But putting something into a CLIA lab is easy, getting doctors to order the test is harder. So what we're focused on now is doing our clinical validation studies. Say, all right, this worked in 20 samples in an academic setting. Now we can show you in a statistically powered clinical validation study that this test works as described on a clinical scale. We're going to publish that data, get the papers out that doctors have told us I would need to see this piece of data and this piece of data before I order the test. That's what we're focused on in our seed round currently. Once we complete seed activities, we'll focus on raising for sales and marketing, putting it into a CLIA lab and attacking the market. You asked if this is relevant for other viruses. There are other viruses, and you're right, our body is full of viruses. It's somewhat terrifying. There are other viruses that have mutations similar to the JC virus that can predict their ability to be pathogenic. Epstein-Barr is one example. However, our patent really covers our ability to detect JC virus. That's one reason we stay focused. And the other reason we stay focused on JC is because although it's one virus, it's relevant to such a broad range of diseases. There are, I think 20 mAbs that have killed patients due to PML as of right now, and there's more coming along the pipeline that look likely to do so. So we think there's plenty of problems to solve, and we're market to focus on JC virus in the long term. So we'll focus first on MS, then expanding to other autoimmune diseases, and then out to the other two conditions that we do AIDS.
Cool. Other questions from Michelle?
Hi, Michelle. I'm just trying to understand in practical terms, how you do the testing. So the people come to your office, and then you draw blood, and then you spin it around, or what's going on? And second question is, when you're a full-fledged business, are you going to have like different offices in different towns, like the way your competitors do at Kest?
Questions. So first question, when we sell this test out of a CLIA lab, we will have one central laboratory location. The way it'll work, if a doctor wants to put their patient on a mAb, they'll draw a blood sample at their office and then ship it to us. We'll spin it around, we'll run our tests. qPCR takes a couple hours, and then send the results back to the physician's office. I think downstream, if we get FDA approval or clearance for this test, we could either have multiple laboratory locations or sell it as a kit directly to physicians' offices.
Hi, this may seem a strange question, but you've got a lot of this quantified in terms of market opportunity. I know a lot of governments are looking at things in health systems in terms of quality of life improvements. Have you done any kind of quantification on what that means in terms of quality of life improvements that you're going to offer, or your test can offer?
Absolutely, yes. So we've done a lot of that work for multiple sclerosis since that's our first market. And we've actually gone out, that started just talking to MS patients who told us why it's very important that they get to take drugs like Tysabri. When we started thinking of this from a scientific perspective, we understood that limits market capture of JC viruses scaring people away. We talked to patients with Tysabri, and they're like, look, you don't know what it was like when we didn't have any options besides Copaxone. Copaxone is an injection I had to give myself every 3 days, and it made me feel like I had the flu every time I gave myself a shot. And I couldn't live that way, so eventually, against my doctor's orders, I stopped taking any medications because that was better. I'll risk the MS relapse versus, having to take this drug with terrible side effects. So, then this patients are like, when Tysabri came out, night and day, this is really important, this is really powerful. So we've done some quantitative analysis on quality of life differences on patients on Tysabri versus first-line drugs like Copaxone. I can tell you quantitatively the numbers are there. You have better quality of life, fewer disability steps, et cetera, but also just from talking to patients. You can hear them say how powerful these drugs are, the difference it makes in their lives, and also how devastating it is to be told they're JC virus positive. You have to wonder, all right, well, I know I'm JC positive, I know most people don't get PML, but what if it's me? Can I make that choice? Can I make that choice if I have children? So that's what we think about.
I wouldn't mind if you would have the other pipeline entrepreneurs stand up so we can know who they are, because I think it's really important, and I would be surprised if I don't see a hug soon based on the fact I went to the Pipeline Entrepreneur Show the other day and they said, oh, we hug each other a lot. And then the second question is about, oh, sure. The second question is about your background that got you into the Pipeline program on, what was it, not this company, I presume, alone, that got you into the entrepreneurship fellowship?
Yeah. Great question. So first of all, we have Jeffrey and Beth in the audience. Jeffrey's here in the front in the white shirt, Beth back there in the lovely florals. So they're happy to talk to you about Pipeline, I'm sure, as well, if you have questions after. To your next question, my background. So I was finishing my PhD when I started Diagnostics, and I had really strong technical background for this company. I had the science, but sometimes I just felt like if someone could give me a crash course in entrepreneurship, I'd be really grateful for it. Like, no one ever sat me down and taught me what a convertible note was, and I wish that someone would. So when I applied to Pipeline, that was a big part of my argument. I was like, look, I've got the technical ability and know how this works. Like, I know I can drive it from the scientific side, but I need help to be an entrepreneur. And that's really Pipeline's focus, is to support entrepreneurs in the Midwest, build this community of people who are going to start not just the company they're working on now, but the next one and the next one and the next one. Now, that's not true for every person that was in my Pipeline class. There were serial entrepreneurs in my class. This wasn't their first business. They've been at this a long time. But I think no matter whether you're first time, you need someone to tell you this advice for the first time, or if you've done this before, but you want like another talented set of eyes to be like, all right, like let's take this, you know, from the beginning and build it up. I think everybody really benefited.
Me again, sorry. Going back to the $1.5 million, you said that, you know, part of it was going to be sales and marketing, everything, and you know, pharmaceutical sales is a nasty business. I mean, it's really, I know a couple of them. It's competitive, it's cutthroat. What is your marketing plan? Because, you know, quite frankly, I've seen a lot of these companies, and they're like, hey, we have the greatest thing since sliced bread, but if no one knows about it, it doesn't matter. You know, and could you just tell me how you plan on you know, selling and marketing this?
Absolutely. So to clarify a little bit, most of our sales and marketing kicks in downstream in our Series A, because you're right, it is cutthroat and it's very expensive to hire talented sales reps in the biotech world. But sales and marketing in Series A is going to be, and actually our sales strategy for MS overall is we're going to be laser focused on capturing the MS treatment centers. And that's something that's unique about the multiple sclerosis market, is there's about 200 MS treatment centers across the United States. And each treats about 2,000 patients each. So you get this clustering of patients at these centers with key opinion leaders that we can target. So in our seed round, we're going to be focused on trade shows, conferences, reaching out to key opinion leaders, you know, collaborations. We already have a few collaborations set up, so we're going to be focused there first, putting out the data, communicating that to physicians. And then once we raise for our Series A, that's when we're going to bring on a sales team that's going to start focusing on converting treatment centers that can capture treatment centers and capture 2,000 patients.
Beautiful, love it.
Thanks.
Michelle, can you just talk a little bit about the evaluation and interview process to be selected as a fellow? Because I've heard really good things about that, even though people that that didn't get selected for the fellowship class got a lot out of the process of trying to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I went in for my interview, and I will say there were people in my class that had interviewed multiple times, there were people in my class that had interviewed once. So getting in on the first shot, coming back, it's all good. For me, when I walked into the interview the first time, they gave me some really valuable advice about my cap table, because when we first started in grad school, I had 4 other founders, and we were sort of like, we're just going to split the equity evenly, 20% each, it's going to be so great, nothing will ever go wrong. When I walked into the Pipeline interview, they were like, no, don't do that. And I was like, but we're a team. And they're like, no, seriously, don't do that. Get help. Like, you know, like think about what could happen. Like, they didn't like restructure my cap table there, but they were like, pay attention to this, understand what I'm telling you about what can go wrong, and think about ways you might want to restructure that. So in between interview 1 and interview 2, when I came back, I was interviewing with a different set of Pipeline members, and they were sort of like, tell me about this cap table. And I was sort of like, look, last time I was here, here's what you told me what the risks were. I've been speaking to my attorney, I've been talking to my other entrepreneurial advisors. We're actually in the process of fixing this, here's how. So I ended up getting in after, the interview process, but even if I hadn't, I already got some really great free entrepreneurship advice that ended up being really important later down the road for me, since we had a couple founders anyway. So, overall, when you interview for Pipeline, they really do start looking closely at your business. They're going to talk to you about it. I think that if you are passionate about what you're building, you're going to have answers to a lot of these questions, or they might expose some things that you haven't thought about, but they're there to help you and give you some advice.
So it's a 2-step process. So you'll do like a first round in front of a panel, and then like a second round with a smaller group, or what does that look like?
So just to put the deadline back up. So when you submit your application, you'll put in your application online, and then there's 2 rounds of interviews. So you'll get invited, if you make it through the first one, you'll get invited twice. Both times it's it's with a small panel of people who run Pipeline or Pipeline members that are heavily involved in the program. So that's my perspective of other Pipeline members in the audience.
Cool. All right. Other questions?
Can you talk a little bit about your funding round in relation to Pipeline, and do you have any resources through there that you feel are part of your funding process?
Totally. Yes, absolutely. So from a few different directions, yeah. So I'm actively out there raising my seed round, and I think the most useful thing has been, well, in a few different directions. So last time there was a pipeline module, it was up in Nebraska. I drove up to Nebraska to do sort of membership events where they would bring in a speaker. So ostensibly you're there to hear a speaker talk about some aspect of company formation, which is always great. But it's always great because you're in the room with a bunch of super talented pipeline members who will walk up to you and say, how's the company doing? You're like, well, actually, I'm raising my seed round and I've hit this roadblock. And then every pipeline person I said that to, like, pulled me aside, got locked into me, and like was like, what's happening? Who are you talking to? Here's who I know. Here's who I can provide an introduction to. So at the end of the day, I was exhausted because I'd had 20 conversations that were super intense deep dives on my round and what was going on. So following up from that, I've had multiple introductions to angel groups that could be interested. So the introductions are helpful, but I've also had advice from people that are like, look, I hit the same roadblock, here's how I got through it, here's how you can get through it. So both introductions to funding sources, so direct connections, but also qualitative advice on how to fundraise, especially great for me because I'm the person who
All right, Jeffrey, you want to
Yeah,
add?
if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
So just kind of stepping back to what Michelle just said, what's different about the most fundamental thing about Pipeline that's different about Capital Innovators, no offense, but like I-10 and Venture Cafe and let's see what else, any T-Rex events, Industrious, etc., is when you're at these events, most likely someone asks you, how's your business going? You know, Jeffrey, John, Mary, whatever. And you're like, it's great, we're doing awesome, everything's great, like, and you're always very positive and you're telling about all the good aspects, when in reality, one of your CTO just quit and your biggest customer just left you and all hell is breaking loose in your company. That's kind of what Michelle just hit on, is when you're in Pipeline, you immediately tell them the truth and there might be some positive things going on, but you're okay to tell the negative things because they're not going to go around, tell it to the press, tell it to your co-founders, tell it to someone else. There's we take this secret pact, and it's not like a cult or anything, but it's very intense where what stays in the room, what you're talked about, stays here, and that's kind of a big deal about what Pipeline does, and so that's important. A couple other things just to stress on that Michelle kind of talked about is with the fellowship. Sorry, the fellowship. It's all about you that first year, okay? And like Michelle said, it's about Jeffrey Harrison, not Rovertown. It's about Michelle, not Pro Diagnostics. It's not about your company, it's about yourself, because they're betting on you now. They know you're going to be an entrepreneur in the next 10 years. It's probably not going to be the same company you're with now, and so forth. So it's an ongoing process of just redefining who you are. So, and for me, I joined Pipeline in the 2015 class, so the class before Michelle. And it was the first time it really opened up to St. Louis because WashU and David Crandish and Stephanie Leffler and Tom Hillman all donated to be a sponsor for a 3-year commitment to bring Pipeline to St. Louis, right? So it's a co-match by Kaufman and others, so it's kind of like an MTC grant. It matches to bring the fellowship here because they don't take equity, so you're not giving equity to Pipeline. You don't get any funding. There's no funding aspect on either way. There's a small stipend for travel, but that's about it. So what I saw was so interesting is I actually learned about Pipeline through Arch Grants, and Abby Cohen from Sparrow Labs had actually done it through Washington University kind of before it was in St. Louis. And for me, we had done the St. Louis Rodeo, okay? We were funded by Arch Grants, moved here from Carbondale, Illinois to St. Louis for Arch Grants. Then we joined fall 2013 Capital Innovators class. We graduated from I-10 Mock Angels. I mean, we checked every box you can imagine. We were at the old T-Rex, the Railway Exchange. We were in the 6th floor here. We moved out into our own building. So we kind of took every startup resource we could in St. Louis, and we used it. But that wasn't enough, and that's kind of the big thing for Pipeline is all of a sudden I'm introduced to the Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City. I'm introduced to all the entrepreneurs there. I'm all of a sudden talking to Think Big. You guys probably don't know who they are. They're over in Kansas City. So I'm talking to all these places for funding, for customers, etc. And then all of a sudden I've never been to Nebraska my whole entire life, and all of a sudden I'm in Nebraska. you know, I'm like walking on the street next to like, you know, Warren Buffett. I'm like, what the hell is going on? It was this convention. It was really weird. But like for me, it was really eye-opening to see Omaha, to see Lincoln, see their tech space, and get to know these people because it's a whole different entrepreneurial culture. So Pipeline is another way to really encourage your expansion across the Midwest. So now I have introductions. I'm meeting with someone from Manhattan, Kansas tomorrow in Kansas City because one of my Pipeline fellows, Aaron McKee, introduced me to him, and this is a 6-figure deal for our company. So it's that kind of stuff that happens. It's not just about the fundraising, but the customers and so forth. So keep that in mind. And what I always like to say, just one more thing, is I think of Pipeline as an honor society for the top class of entrepreneurs in each city. That's the way I look at it. And like Michelle said, you might not make it on the first try, and we didn't make our grants on the first try, our capital innovators, but like you really bubble to the top, and it's the people that really are true entrepreneurs, not entrepreneurs. And that's kind of what our mantra is, and we screen people really well, and that's why Melissa was, you know, talking about the screening process is very intense. Like I was like, you get there like 10 minutes before you get the notes of like who your interviewees are, you write down all their names, you're Googling everyone, you're freaking out because you're trying to make a good impression. And it's pretty intense, but once you get in, it's a real family. And we're excited for you guys to join that family and be part of all of us. And Beth is actually in the current class right now. So it's funny because we're all laddered on different years, but we all know each other and we're all close. So any other questions you guys have, you know, I'm sure Beth can talk to some ideas too, as she's a current fellow. So.
Anything else? Okay, well we can, I'm now out of frame, sorry. All right, well thank you so much, Michelle, for coming, and Jeffrey and Beth for sharing, and for bringing bio to the community. All right, go drink coffee and meet somebody you haven't already met, and come back next week for, are you presenting or Sarah presenting next week? Both, Christian and Sarah with Multipass. Have a good week, guys.